Now, to close the symposium, we've got the honor of welcoming Boris Bergmann. On the occasion of the publication of this great book you might have already bought and read, signed off autographed by Boris, called Mont Analogue, by René Daumal, published by Gallimard. He was born in 1992. He's not even 30 years old. He's one of a prolific author. He already published 5 novels. The last one is Insurgés, published in 2020 by Calmann-Lévy, and his novel The Deserter that he published in 2016 is tackling sci-fi using a hacker used by the army to program drones in the war against the caliphate. You're going to talk about another sci-fi work you read when you were young, which remained with you, like inspiration, called Mont Analogue, which is a work by the poet and writer René Daumal. He was co-author of a surrealistic magazine. It was published after his death. It is incomplete. It was written between 1939 and 1943. It is not visible. It disappears sometimes in the landscape. It's a collective adventure, an ecological novel which inspired many artists, writers, but not only, also scientists, notably the Biosphere 2 movie director, Matt Wolf, who said that he was quite inspired by the Mont Analogue when he directed this movie, the film, the book, was the occasion of a dialogue with a lot of artists. You're going to talk about Alexandru Jodorowsky, a Chilean director, and Philippa Reno. And at the same time you published, you can go to the FRAC Garden. There's an exhibition which you present now until the 23rd December. Please go and visit this great exhibition, bring together kind of artist works, but also archives. Now, I'll give you the floor without further ado, Boris. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Quite astounding in a sci-fi colloquium to talk about Mont Analogue, which is a general literature book of the history stored in the streets of Paris, which is not sci-fi based. A very commonplace Paris. However, we're going to look for a mysterious world with new rules and regulations. We're going to set up an outing to this impossible world. Analogue is a simple story of a young alpinist, a mountain climber, who thinks that there is an invisible mountain whose summit is irreachable. This mount has direct access between our Earth, our reality, and the sky. What goes beyond, he's convinced of the existence of this mountain, and he will set up a kind of community of believers led by Professor Sogol, and he's going to look for this mountain, the Analogue Mount. As Flora said, it's a very important book. I discovered it when I was 15 years old, and right away I was struck by its poetry. You're facing a kind of a fairy tale, and basically, with a simple language, Daumal gives access to a world which is mysterious and to a quest which is physical, the quest for the mountain climb to the top, or an interior quest. I read and reread this work, and I found a new aspect every time. Political, poetic, ecological, economic. It's a book with a kind of infinite future. I was fascinated by Daumal, resulting in my doing an inquiry. The first part of the quest was to look for traces about Daumal. Traces on Daumal. I went to libraries, the Jacques Doucet Library, IMEC, but also museums, the Museum of Modern Art in Paris, or the Museum of Fine Arts in Reims, to find cues, as it were, of the presence of Daumal. And I was fortunate to have access to the family archives of the family to find pictures, manuscripts. And it was the first part of the biographical quest for Mont Analogue. The second part, that's where it's quite interesting. Daumal died before he completed the book, where, in the middle of the climbing, this will not be a kind of shortcoming or fault. This will make it possible for a whole generation or generations of artists to use the book as a kind of source, as a kind of inspiration. I wanted to meet, it was impossible to meet them all because even during the few days at Arles, I met new artists talking about the analog mount. Great. Were many more, and I tried to meet some like Philippe Areno, Dorozowski, Patti Smith, but also young artists who really took hold of the narrative. This quest resulted in the exhibition of FRAC in Champagne-Ardenne in Reims, which you can see until the 23rd December. And as an extension thereof, the book published by Gallimard Publishing House, historical publishing house of Daumal. It brings together the original text and all the traces, all these evidence or proof collected, and all the analog visions of artists who liked Daumal, and to give to the novel and to the Mount infinite scope or reach. Before talking about the book, I wanted to show you a great portrait of Daumal by his friend Joseph Sima, the art director of the magazine Les Enjeux. I wanted to talk about Daumal, who is not one of the well-known author. He's a cultish author, but I wanted to go back to his seated here in this great photograph as a student in the high school at Reims. Daumal and his best friend, Roger Gilles-Lecomte, killing him for laughs. Added the photographer. Let me read a passage to present to you who was René Daumal. René Daumal has not a great role in history, a few lines. Lapidary, 16 March 1909. He was born in Bouzy-Court, small village in the Ardennes region. He went to Charleville-Mézières. He went to the high school in Reims. He encountered many more people, tempted by experimentation and going beyond limits. Teenager friendships, Roger Gilles-Lecomte, a double ally, a brother, drugs, drifts into games, sideline experience, writing, certainty to be different, not to obey anything but your own law. This brings to trust, unshakable trust, training, formation of a clan, departure to Paris, study at Henri-IV High School. He could not attend normal school because he had an accident on his swing. He discovered mountain climbing end of the year, the clan becomes a group, the Plongez, with the eponymous magazine with the radical revolutionary ambitions. Friendship with the Czech painter, the photographer Arthur Arfo. Attempt by René Breton to bring people into the right path. Meeting with Alexander Salzman in 1930, initiating him with the thought of Gurdjieff, fragmentation of alliances between teenagers, a spiritual quest, palliative to the failure of the Plongez. His interest for India made him the press attaché Uwe visit to the U.S., first collection of poems in 1936, Contre ciel, first the novel La Grande Breuvrie, The Great Drunkenness, very fragile health. The analog book, his wife was Jewish. She was born in Russia, but he died of TB in 1944 before he could complete his work. So it's a life which is very short. He died at 36 years of age. Let me go back to 3 points which struck me in the young René Daumal. The first is Le Grand Jeu. Le Grand Jeu, the great game. It is called an avant-garde, parasurrealistic movement, but it's more than this. It's first a collective experiment which aims at jeopardizing, changing the limits of conscience. Daumal will take drugs not to go high, but as a subject for study. Unfortunately, from his experiments, will bring about a very fragile health. This experience is quite interesting because it was young people from the provinces in France who did not belong to the bourgeois circles of Paris, who were more punk, more radical, more revolutionary, and they had a kind of intransigence in the Grand Jeu. You got two characters, René Daumal, Gilbert Lecomte. Gilbert Lecomte will get into drugs more and more. He will become a drug addict. To escape this, Daumal will find two remedies. The first is the mountain climbing. The mountain climbing. Here's a great photograph I found in the archives. There's possibly one before. No, wrong one. Okay, right, you got Daumal seated. People at the time, wore different clothes. The relationship to the mountain is very interesting because the mountain is not simply a symbol, not simply a spiritual climbing. Daumal was a real mountain climber. He knew the mountain. He was obsessed with summits. He's a young 30-year-old man suffering from TB in spite of his ill health. Against his own nature, will look for summits and wanted to go even higher. To him, mountain climbing is really an obsession, which is actual and real. The other side, or other remedy to this failure of the Grand Jeu Daumal here is on the summits, or again, well-dressed here, and the other palliative to the failure of Ganges, India. Daumal is a fascinating character who will learn Sanskrit alone. He will criticize the old translations, rewriting this. He will be self-taught. He will be interested in yoga, sacred dances, and become a real scientist, a real savant. You may move on to the Mont Analogue. He will mix the the passion for mountain climbing, the quest for summits, obsession with climbing and going down. He said, the bottom does not know the height, but the top knows the bottom. He will mix and match the pursuit of heights with a mystical thought and the quest for oneself, which is to be found in his study of Indian Sanskrit. It's an unpublished manuscript. You could tell he could really write Sanskrit. That's Uday Shankar, the dancer for whom he became a press attaché. He was also the elder brother of Ravi Shankar, who will play with the Beatles, and the Beatles will read later Mont Analogue. To close the loop, so much for Daumal. Now, Mont Analogue, as I said, the story is quite simple. It's a quest, a kind of education novel. There's an expedition being set up toward this invisible world. You've got two things which were fascinating to me. The first is what is incomplete. It's not a shortcoming. Patti Smith said it in her preface when she discovered Mont Analogue for the first time. She said, okay, there was a problem of printing. Why does it stop right here? I got to buy a new book, but not at all. Daumal leaves us in the middle of the mountain when a new world reveals new species, new rules. In fact, this incomplete novel was condemned because the first edition of the Mont Analogue dates back to 1953, and the last sentence was not completed. There was a comma left over. The publisher at the time transformed this comma into a full stop, which is counteressential. This incompleteness made it possible for many artists to take hold of the text and to turn it into some kind of secret passage to creation and to be inspired by it. Daumal was forgotten after World War II in France. Very quickly, he was translated into English at the end of the 50s, and the book in the U.S. was successful, becoming a kind of New Age symbol of the hippies. And Daumal, for example, you have coffee shops in California called Mont Analogue, as if it were a cult object. Daumal will have this kind of posterity beyond the borders of France. In New York, a small publishing house called Animan Books will translate Daumal text alongside the text of the Beat Generation. Daumal will be seen as a forerunner of the Beat Generation and of all this kind of thought in the U.S. That's how Patti Smith discovered the book by happenstance. Another affiliation is in Italy. In Italy, the book will be translated in the 60s. This will be quite different. You've got to get into the book. Will have a lot of success because it's because of its mysticism. It will be taken over by musicians of experimental music. There's a lot of experimental musicians in Italy who turn Mont Analogue into sound. This incomplete book, we've tried to find documents to retrace the working plan to know where he wanted to get in this incomplete book. At a kind of very important affiliation outside the borders, but also was taken over by a French artist and by the French state. You can see here Philippe Arenaud, whom I interviewed. One of the interviews in the book wanted to adapt Mont Analogue for the movie. It's a great story, invisible mountain, quite adventurous. The project just came a cropper, and this failure, that's what Philippe said, this failure was not an end in itself, but this incomplete project put it at the same level. The analog mount exists, as Yona said. Sometimes there's a fictitious reality. You've got to talk about it to make it live and sharing ideas. Philippe adapted Mont Analogue as a kind of code, transforming the text into a kind of completely dazzling film or movie. That's it. That's the exhibition in Reims. This incompleteness made it possible for the text to be a kind of source for many artists. The second aspect I want to address, you've got a lot of other aspects to discover. The second aspect is in a sentence, which is at the core of the text, which is to me the key, because we're two. Everything changes. The text is not twice easier. No, from impossible it becomes possible. That's a time where the young mountain climber meets somebody who believes in the existence of the Mont Analogue, and Daumal described the possibility of a collective community. That's why a lot of artists like this. We have possibly, after the failure of the Enjeux, his first adolescent alliances, there's the possibility of you cannot discover Mont Analogue alone. You cannot climb to its summit without the help of other people. It starts with a belief in the other, believing in the existence of the analog. Amount is to believe in the others. We create together. That's why I wanted to set up an exhibition as the first experience as a curator. I'm a writer and I'm alone. I wanted to bring together and to be collective, to give birth to a Mont Analogue. Here is a young Belgian painter taking up Daumal's drawings, and that's the chapel for Daumal in the exhibition. Since we are two, everything changes. The impossible becomes possible. To me, these are the two keys to this book, which is to me a magical book. Let me end up with a poem, which is very short. I was fortunate to find this poems in papers. It was lost at the bottom of a crate of archives. I wanted to put it as a foreword to the book. It is so poetic and so beautiful. I am dead because I don't have any desire. I have no desire because I believe I own. I believe I own because I'm not trying to give. Let's try to give. You can see you have nothing. You have nothing, so you're trying to give oneself. Trying to give oneself. You're nothing. You're nothing. You want to become something. If you want to become something, you are alive. René Daumal, May 1943. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce que nous avons des questions à Boris Bergmann après ce magnifique... Parce qu'en fait, on a un peu envie que ça termine comme... que ce symposium termine comme le livre, c'est-à-dire un peu comme une phrase inachevée et que ça laisse des potentiels incroyables à l'imaginaire.
Sinon, on peut se poser des questions dans les jardins de LUMA.
Oui, sinon on peut se poser des questions dans les jardins de LUMA, ce qui est très sympa aussi. Et donc, non mais vraiment merci pour cette magnifique manière de montrer, qui vraiment en fait représente quelque chose qui est important dans ce symposium, qui est comment est-ce que des thématiques différentes, comment est-ce que des problématiques vont infuser le travail des artistes et comment est-ce que leur travail ne se construit pas tout seul et se construit surtout pas que en référence à d'autres artistes. Il y a des champs extraordinairement larges qui nourrissent le travail des artistes qu'on propose ici. Et donc c'est vraiment l'un des objectifs de ce cycle de conférences. Flora, tu voulais dire un mot ? Si
Si vous pouviez expliquer un tout petit peu plus le rapport de René Daumal avec l'écologie.
L'écologie, oui. Alors c'est l'une des filiations. C'est vrai qu'il y en a beaucoup d'autres et que j'ai pas tout. Mais c'est vrai que l'une des filiations, on a dit que Le Mont Analogue était l'un des romans précurseurs en matière d'écologie, puisque, par exemple, Daumal invente le steak végétal. Puisque les alpinistes du Mont Analogue vont se nourrir, il n'y a pas de bœufs sur le Mont Analogue, donc ils vont trouver certaines manières de créer, ils ne l'appellent pas comme ça, mais c'est assez intéressant. Et en fait, il y a une scène aussi très importante, c'est un alpiniste qui tue par erreur un rat. Et ce rat avait une importance fondamentale puisqu'il tuait lui-même des guêpes vénéneuses. Et donc, avec la mort du rat, toute la chaîne naturelle, tout l'écosystème du Mont Analogue est bouleversé. Et donc on a vu, est bouleversé par qui? Par l'homme, bouleversé par cette présence humaine qui vient déranger les règles du Mont Analogue. Donc de nombreux scientifiques ont aimé ce livre et s'en sont servis, ou en tout cas l'ont lu, et ont vu voilà, une espèce d'écologisme avant l'heure, ou en tout cas de pensée écologique assez précurseur. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup.
Ne tuez pas les rats.
Bon. Oui, bien sûr.
Je pense que cet après-midi, vous avez programmé un film. Je voulais juste peut-être indiquer.
I want to tell you the relations between Mont Analogue, and René Daumal, and the film, which is a documentary on Biosphere 2, which is a project designed, conceived by John Allen with the support of a Texan billionaire called Bill. I met him only once. John Allen had a gallery in London exhibiting many things which are related to sci-fi. What I want to tell you is as follows. The group imagining the Biosphere 2 is based upon the writings of Daumal. Before having the Biosphere, they also created a theater group, which you might look for in the U.S. Just to show you the linkage, I don't know whether, Boris, you studied or you already seen this documentary. I'm going to see it later, which is not totally inspired by it, but it's a kind of description. It's a documentary on the Biosphere project, showing again what Mont Analogue can provoke and cause in every extremes. Quite interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again for all this. Thank you for the day. It was a pleasure to have you with us. Honestly, I want to thank the technical teams, communications, great work, and of course our speakers, well, the generosity of their statements, and of course, I want to thank in the teams Claire Charrier, Diane Zergam, as well as, of course, Maya, for her support in ambitious projects. Once again, have a nice day, and thank you. Now let's meet, if you want, for the movie at 3 p.m. And there will be a signature at the library on fire. You got to sign up half an hour before the screening. Thank you again.